Welcome, everybody. If you have any questions for our presenter, you can go ahead and type that in, as well as if you need any tech support. We're here for you. We're now happy to turn this over to our speaker for today's presentation.
Great, thanks everybody. And this session is being recorded as well. You are here for the 20-minute session about using artificial intelligence to optimize the relationship between institutions and their constituents. My name is Fred Weiss, and I'm the President and CEO of Othot, which is how you pronounce the name of the company. It comes from original thought. So once again, it's Othot if you're wondering how to pronounce it. I'm a former CASE board member and staff person at CASE. Spent about 20 years with what is now Elucium, what was then SunGard Higher Education, and was the CEO of iModule Software for about 5.5 years. And I'm a CASE laureate as well. You see my email address there as well as my Twitter handle. Feel free to follow me or jot down the email address if you've got a reason to be in touch with me. And I'll give you a couple of reasons, hopefully, over the course of the next 20 minutes. There's a Q&A function in Zoom that I'm assuming most of you are familiar with, so feel free to post questions there if you've got any, and we'll take them as we go through. So the first thing I want to talk about is who Othot is. Most of you, if not all of you, have never heard of us before. So just a quick overview. First of all, we're not a startup company. We're actually an early stage company based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the city of bridges. And we provide a SaaS software solution that's focused on artificial intelligence and machine learning. In fact, 40% of the Othot team are data scientists or technologists or data curators, which means that obviously really good sized proportion of our team are focused on the work that we do around AI and machine learning. Of course, most of you are aware that there are lots of different ways that AI can be used. There is conversational AI, which you're probably very familiar with through the use of chatbots. And we see those quite a bit on a lot of higher education websites. There's also content optimization AI. You're probably familiar with that from using Gmail, if you do use Gmail, where responses are suggested as a result of an email that you might receive. Our focus is around predictive and prescriptive analytics, and I'll talk more about that in a second. And we do that across the student life cycle, from an individual who might be an admissions prospect all the way through their status, his or her status as an alumnus or an alumna, and a lifelong learner for your institution. And I'll talk more about that in a second as well. So some of you may be familiar with the Gartner maturity curve for advanced analytics. And this chart shows the movement from what happened in the past, called descriptive analytics, through the why it happened, the diagnostic part of analytics, to what will happen, the predictive part of analytics, to how to ensure that it happens, which is the prescriptive part of analytics. Lots of advancement shops are really, really good at the descriptive part. Some of them are pretty good at the diagnostic shop, and you've got a number that are also doing the predictive part, but that tends to be few, and there are even fewer that are actually doing the prescriptive part. At Othot, we actually do a lot of what did happen, so that's the descriptive part, and why did it happen, the diagnostic part, but our real focus and the real value, and actually the big differentiator that we provide, is around the predictive and prescriptive part. Just to give you a frame of reference, if you went to the Arizona State session that was held earlier today by Cindy Casper, she talked a lot about predictive analytics. Well, we do that plus the prescriptive part. And in the commercial world, you're very, very familiar with companies who make prescriptions. I'm sure a lot of you are actually Netflix users or, of course, Amazon users and Google users, and you're really, really familiar with the fact that they're making suggestions to you. That's the prescriptive part, of course. And they're doing that both for your own benefit and, of course, in their cases, as commercial entities for their benefit. As I mentioned, for us, the prescriptions are a major differentiator from other internal and third-party solutions that are out there. Our specific recommendations about what you should do ensure or help to ensure that the predictions actually happen. And those prescriptions, of course, require human interaction around them. So this is where you've got the marrying of technology and people to help drive an outcome that might be desired. And in fact, you can actually use the prescriptions to do things like A/B testing if you want to see that there may be a preferred method with some of those prescriptions. We're used to dealing with thousands and thousands of data elements, and we're used to building hundreds of data models. And those data models are usually based on the prior 2 to 3 years of data to come up with models that match the predictions of what would have happened in the past in order to create predictions about what is likely to happen in the future, as well, of course, as to identify those things that are prescriptive in nature. Our customer base is comprised of both large and small publics and privates. So the data sets could be, for a small private liberal arts institution, or alternatively, they could be for a really large public institution. And by example, Texas Tech is a client of ours, as is the University of Pittsburgh. And at the other end of the spectrum is, a very small school, the Massachusetts College of Art, just as one example. One of the big things about the Othot platform is that we provide those predictive and prescriptive analytics across the student life cycle. We look at the 4 things that you see here as the 4 nodes of the solution set that we provide. So for enrollment, it's around recruiting and admissions to make sure that you've got the best fit class at your institution, and also how to optimize or best leverage financial aid that you might be offering to some of those prospective students. In the student success area, this is around retention from year to year, as well as, of course, persistence through a major and through a degree. Postgraduate success in our world is around ensuring that somebody finds a job in the profession that they want, but also making sure that they have the ability to manage their alumni debt, what some people refer to as student debt. And then lastly, of course, in the advancement function around time, talent, and treasure and lifelong learning, I'll talk more about that in a second. As I mentioned, we're an early stage company. We've got about 35 clients today. The vast majority of those clients of ours, what we call partners, are in the enrollment space, and some of them are in the student success space. And we've done proofs of concepts in both postgraduate success and advancement. And we're using Cases Drive Conference as a chance to identify those of you who might have an interest in being early adopters for our advancement solution before we do official product launch. I'll talk a little bit more about that POC in a second. What's interesting about the approach that we take is that these 4 nodes can be deployed in their entirety at a single institution, or an institution can subscribe to only 1 of the nodes or 2 of the nodes. And as well, a single institution, let's say, could have 2 of the enrollment nodes, 1 for their undergraduate programs and 1 for their graduate programs. So we look at this as the full student life cycle, from recruiting and admissions all the way through the lifelong relationship that somebody has with alma mater. One of the things that we've tried to do is, in the advancement area, to think about this in the context of Cases alumni engagement metrics. So you may be familiar with the framework that Case built out around alumni engagement. And we've used that framework to think about the way in which we can provide an AI solution, a predictive and prescriptive analytics solution for advancement specifically. Now, we've added a separate mode to Cases framework. So Cases framework has philanthropic, volunteer, experiential, and communication, and then we've broken out alumni association as separate. So, of course, in the philanthropic space, what we think about for predictive and prescriptive analytics is how do you acquire a new donor? What's the prediction that we can make about donor acquisition as well as donor retention? And that's primarily around annual giving or the annual fund. In addition to that, we can also provide predictive and prescriptive analytics around the major gift pipeline, who is most likely to make a major gift, and quite frankly, what are the steps that you might move somebody through in order to make those predictions come through. In the volunteer space, again, this is about volunteer retention and predicting which volunteers are most likely to be retained as well as how do you acquire new ones, and best use of volunteers as well, given where they might be in their life cycle, given how far they are from the institution, given what their business interests might be. And again, not just predicting who is most likely to be retained or who most likely to become a new volunteer, but also providing the suggestions as to the steps that you might take. Experiential, the same way, around event participation and recommendations. In the communication space, it might be about how do you optimize social engagement with certain constituents, or how do you best recruit and retain ambassadors, social ambassadors, and as well for advocacy optimization, what are the best things that you might take, the best steps you might take to maintain those volunteers from a communication standpoint in the advocacy world, as well as, again, what are the specific steps you might do to move along that continuum. We broke out Alumni Association as separate, if only because, for some institutions, as you well know, this is a separate entity. There may or may not be a connection to giving if we're working with a separate alumni association or not. But of course, that could be married with the philanthropic bit or the annual giving bit, again, around renewals or acquisition, or actually alumni association and its impact on philanthropic support. From a proof of concept standpoint, from where Othot is today, our focus is around philanthropic. And the proof of concept I'll tell you about in a second was around work that was being done in that area first, specifically for the annual fund. And that's the type of activity where we see that people have the greatest interest in what we can do. And that's where we want our work to begin. But of course, there may be other opportunities as well. So one question you might have is around where does Othot's solution set, what we call the Othot platform, fit into the overall advancement landscape? And so one way to think about this is, first of all, you've got a myriad, as you well know, of your data sources, right? Your data is stored in lots of different places, primarily in your CRM platform, but you've got your digital tools that you're using for email marketing, or that you're using for transaction processing, or that you're using for website management, like your CMS. You've got your wealth screening, you've got your scholarship system, their co-curricular data, which is incredibly important, your SIS, your HR system, and all the other data sources that you might have, including a data warehouse or a data lake. We're actually used to working in the recruiting and admission space, in the enrollment space, with a similar myriad set of data sources. And so part of our job, part of our data curation team's job, is to bring data together from a myriad of sources in order to build out the models that we talk about. So you've got all of these data repositories and data sources. And as you well know, those actually serve up data to your team that's provided through your BI solutions. So you've got your reporting solutions. These might be the reporting solutions that come with your native CRM. It may be stuff that you built out on your own, standardized reports. But you've also provided BI as self-service, right? So somebody can go in and prompt themselves for their own criteria or build out an ad hoc statement. We sit above that. We actually can take the data that you are using in your BI solutions that's coming from these repositories, and we use that data to provide insights to your knowledge workers. So these are all the folks that work across your advancement office that see the data, but they've never had the ability to actually understand what this might mean in the future for what could happen in the future. And so those are what those insights are all about, to help prospect management team members or major gift team members or stewardship members or stewardship staff get insight as to what may happen, what could happen, and of course, how to make it happen. So really, we're talking about our predictions and prescriptions being used to best inform the work of those knowledge. One of the big differentiators between our AI solution and others that you might see is that we don't have the concept of a black box. We have what we call explainable AI. And this waterfall chart is what we mean by explainable AI. So this is data that comes directly from the proof of concept work that we did around annual giving. And what you can see on the left-hand side in that gray bar is the count of individuals that were most likely to make a gift based upon the models that we built from prior year data sets. But then what you see in the green and red bars is the biggest impacts on those individuals' likelihood to give, with the green bars being the most positive impacts and the red bars being the most negative impacts. So every client of ours receives waterfall charts like you see here, and the idea is to give you insight as to what are the most important factors. But what's really cool about this is that we don't just do it at this aggregate level. Those aggregates, by the way, could be all donors or all donors with a particular degree or all donors by gender. But we also provide this explainable AI at the individual level. So you can actually see a waterfall chart like this for Mary Lou, or for Fred, or for Katrina, or for Murray. That's another big difference between what we do and what you'll see from other solution providers. It's explainable AI, but it's at the individual level. And those cohorts that I mentioned can be even more granular. So the proof of concept work that we did actually broke that institution's population into two data sets. One was 3-year lapsed and non-donors. In other words, folks who had given prior to 3 years before and people who had never given. And then more recent donors who had given any amount in at least one of the prior 3 years. And the data you can see was driven from demographic and geographic and co-curricular data and alumni association data. But what you can see on the right-hand side is that the top importances that influence somebody's likelihood to give varied between these two populations. That's what's really, really powerful about the explainable AI, that we can get to cohorts that allow you to start to see where the differences are and what the switches are that are most important. But again, also being able to do that for you at the individual level. So by example, in the top population, you can see that distance from campus is the least important of the influencing factors as to whether or not somebody would make a gift. And in the bottom population, you can see that it was the 5th most important factor, but actually had a lower percentage in terms of its influence. And of course, it's the amount of gifts that somebody's made in the past that have the highest influence in the bottom, but whether or not somebody is a member of the Alumni Association has the highest influence for that population at the top. The more data we have from you, of course, the more differentiated the models can become and more predictive they can become at both the aggregate level and, of course, at the individual. So the 4 things that we actually see as big differentiators in our AI platform from what you see from others are as I've outlined here. The first of those is, of course, explainable AI. What we really mean by that is you see the factors that most positively influence and negatively influence the models. And the second, of course, is understanding not just at the cohort level, but at the individual level. And this is really important, of course, in annual giving. It's very important in the major gift side. Of course, we also apply it on the recruiting and admission side and the student retention side as well. The prescriptions, of course, the actual actions that you can take at the individual level or at the cohort level to most likely make the predictions happen. And then the last piece of it is the fact that there is continuous intelligence. As you gather more data, even in near time, the models will be updated. So if you've launched another email marketing campaign and you've got the results of that, those results can be fed into the model and the model will be updated. If you've just had your day of giving and all of a sudden you've got a new cohort of donors, we can ingest that data into the model, and of course, that will update the model based upon the new data that you provide. So 4 big differentiators: explainable AI, understanding the individual, what the prescriptions are, and of course, the ongoing and continuous intelligence. As I mentioned earlier, this is a SaaS solution, and we are SOC 2 compliant, and the environment is very, very secure. I'm sure some of you may have questions about security. We're happy to answer those if you have some interest. So I'm happy to take any questions that you might have, but I also want to talk about some next steps for those of you who may have some interest. First of all, surf to othot.com and you can learn more about our product offerings there. You can also read a wide series of blog posts and case studies. We have a set of resource pages that are specifically around COVID-19. And there are some interesting data comparisons there. What to do in a very strange year. We actually call this the year of data anomaly. Because so much has changed this year relative to prior years. You can also join our mailing list on othot.com, go to the contact page and enter your contact information. Of course, we encourage you to follow Othot on both Twitter and LinkedIn. And if any of you have an interest or you believe that your institution might have an interest in being an early adopter around advancement, feel free to email me directly at fbweiss@othot.com. And of course, feel free to follow me at Fred_higher ed on Twitter. I actually have chewed up all the time, and there are a couple of questions that have come in, and I'll answer those questions offline. I know the names of the folks that have answered the questions, so happy to do that. And with that, I will thank all of you for being with us today. Appreciate your time and attention, and hopefully this was interesting enough for you that we'll hear from some of you about doing some work with us. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.